Every year, on the morning of April 17th, Henry Collins did exactly the same thing. He woke before sunrise, made himself a pot of coffee, opened the kitchen curtains, and quietly whispered, "Happy birthday, old friend." There was no one else in the house. No balloons, no gifts, no birthday songs, only silence. The kind of silence that grows after many years of living alone. Henry had just turned 80 years old. His hands were slower now. His hair had turned completely white, but every birthday he followed the same tradition. He baked a small vanilla cake using the same recipe his wife, Elizabeth, had written on an old recipe card nearly 50 years earlier. He never changed a single ingredient. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 2 eggs. Don't forget the pinch of cinnamon. Elizabeth had written in the margin, "It's the secret." Henry smiled every time he read those words. Some recipes feed the body, others keep memories alive. The cake finished baking just before noon. Its sweet smell filled the little house. Henry carefully placed it on the dining table. Then he opened a small kitchen drawer. Inside were birthday candles. He counted slowly, 1, 2, 3, until he reached 80. Then he stopped, smiled to himself, and quietly said, "I don't think this cake is big enough for all of these." So, as he had done for many years, he placed only 1 candle in the center. 1 candle for another year, he whispered. After lighting it, he closed his eyes, not to make a birthday wish, but to remember Elizabeth, her laughter, her warm hands, the way she always sang "Happy Birthday" much too loudly. Then he remembered someone else, David, his son, the last birthday they had spent together 25 years ago. There had been a family dinner, a disagreement, voices raised too high, words spoken too quickly. David walked out before dessert. Henry still remembered the sound of the front door closing. He never imagined it would become the last time they saw each other. There were no birthday cards after that, no Christmas visits, no Father's Day, phone calls, only years passing quietly. Sometimes Henry wondered which memory hurt more, the argument or the silence that followed after eating a single slice of birthday cake. Henry carried the rest to the front porch. Every birthday, he shared it with the neighbors, children, delivery drivers, anyone who happened to walk by. Elizabeth always said, a birthday cake should never be eaten alone. Henry still believed she was right. Late that afternoon, his mailbox made a familiar sound. The metal door clicked shut. Henry wasn't expecting any mail. Most days, the mailbox held only bills, advertisements, or nothing at all. But today, there was a single envelope, cream-colored, slightly faded, the edges soft with age. There was no return address, only 1 line, written carefully across the front. To Henry, on your birthday. Henry frowned. The handwriting looked familiar, painfully familiar. His heart began to beat a little faster. He slowly ran his fingers across the envelope. Then, almost afraid to turn it over, he whispered, "No, it couldn't be," because he already knew, before opening it, exactly whose handwriting it was. Elizabeth's. Henry stood quietly in the front hallway, the envelope still resting in his hands. For a long moment, he couldn't move. He traced the familiar letters with his fingertips, the graceful curves, The careful spacing, the tiny flourish. At the end of every Y, he had seen that handwriting thousands of times on grocery lists, birthday cards, love notes, left beside his morning coffee, and every Christmas, Elizabeth always signed the family's cards the very same way. There was no doubt it was hers, but Elizabeth had been gone for 10 years. Henry slowly sat down in his favorite chair. The envelope rested gently on his lap. His heart was racing. He wanted to open it. He was afraid to open it because once the seal was broken, there would be no turning back. He closed his eyes. Suddenly, a memory returned. 26 years earlier, Elizabeth had been sitting at this very table. She was writing several birthday cards, one for a neighbor, one for her sister. One, she quickly slipped into another envelope. Before Henry could read it, he had smiled. "Who's that for?" Elizabeth looked up, her eyes sparkling. "It's a surprise," she replied. Henry laughed. "You've never been very good at keeping secrets." Elizabeth smiled. "Maybe this one I'll manage." He never asked again. No. 26 years later, Henry wondered if this had been that secret. His hands shook gently as he picked up the letter opener Elizabeth had given him on their 25th anniversary. The silver handle had become worn from years of use. Engraved across it were 4 simple words: "Forever begins at home." Henry smiled sadly. "It certainly did," he whispered, with great care. He opened the envelope. Inside was a birthday card, cream-colored, decorated with blue wildflowers. Elizabeth's favorite. He slowly opened it. Inside were just a few words. "Happy birthday, my love. If you're reading this, I've already gone." Henry's breathing caught. A tear fell quietly onto the card. He gently turned the page. Folded inside was another letter, longer, carefully folded, waiting patiently for its moment. Before reading it, Henry noticed something else. Sleep. From the envelope, an old photograph. He picked it up. It showed 3 smiling faces: Henry, Elizabeth, and little David, perhaps 8 years old. They were standing in front of a birthday cake. David had frosting across his nose. Elizabeth was laughing. Henry remembered exactly what happened. David had tried to blow out every candle before anyone finished singing. They laughed for nearly 10 minutes. Looking at the picture, Henry whispered, "We were happy, so very happy." He placed the photograph beside the birthday cake, still sitting on the table. One candle still burned softly, its tiny flame reflecting in the glass, covering the picture frame. Henry unfolded Elizabeth's letter. His hands trembled more than they had in years. The first sentence stopped him completely. "Henry, before you read another word, I need you to promise me something." He leaned back, took a slow breath, then quietly said, "I promise." And with tears already filling his eyes, he began to read. Henry carefully unfolded Elizabeth's letter. The paper had yellowed with age, but her handwriting was still as graceful as the day she wrote it. He took a slow breath, then began reading. "My dearest Henry, if you're reading this, then I know I'm no longer sitting beside you on your birthday. If that's true, I hope you still baked the little vanilla cake, and I hope you remembered the cinnamon, because you always forgot it when I wasn't watching." Henry couldn't help but smile. He looked toward the cake. "I remembered," he whispered. "And yes," I added, "the cinnamon." He continued reading. "You probably think this letter is my last gift, To you, it isn't. It's my last request. Henry's smile slowly faded. He already knew Elizabeth well enough to understand she would never ask for something without a reason. He continued, for 25 years, I've watched the two men I love most live as strangers. Henry closed his eyes. He didn't need to ask who she meant. Him and David. The letter continued. I know, both of you. I know. You're both stubborn. You both believe the other person should make the first move. And because neither of you did, time quietly passed between you. Henry lowered the letter. Outside, the afternoon breeze moved softly through Elizabeth's roses. He whispered to himself, I thought I had more time. His eyes returned to the page. Henry, please don't spend the rest of your life waiting. Pride has stolen enough birthdays, enough Christmases, enough ordinary Tuesdays. Don't let it steal another year. A tear rolled gently down Henry's cheek. He remembered every birthday he had celebrated without David, every Christmas he had wrapped one extra present, then quietly placed it back in the closet. Every Father's Day, when he picked up the telephone, dial it half of David's number, then hung up before it connected, not because he wasn't brave enough, because he was afraid his son wouldn't answer. The next paragraph made his hands begin to tremble. Henry, I have something I've never told you, not because I wanted to keep a secret, but because I was waiting for the right moment. If this letter has reached you, then I believe that moment has finally come. Inside the envelope, you'll find one more piece of paper. Please, don't be angry after you read it. Remember, everything I did was for love. Henry frowned. He carefully reached inside the envelope again. There was one final sheet, folded twice, smaller than the others. His heart beat faster. Slowly, he opened it. At the top was a name, David Collins. Below it was a street address, a town nearly 200 miles away, a phone number, and one sentence, written in Elizabeth's handwriting. I've kept in touch with him all these years. Henry stopped breathing. He stared at the page, unable to believe what he was seeing. Elizabeth had known where David lived for 25 years, and she had carried that secret alone. At the bottom, she had written just one final line. Please don't wait another birthday. Henry looked at the family photograph, then at the old telephone, then back at David's address. For the first time in 25 years, he realized he no longer had an excuse, only a choice. And somewhere 200 miles away, a man who had once called him Dad was living without knowing that tomorrow everything was about to change. The house felt quieter than ever before. Henry sat at the kitchen table. David's address rested beside his cold cup of coffee. For 25 years, he had imagined this moment. Sometimes he imagined David opening the door and embracing him. Other times, he imagined the door closing once again. Fear has a strange way of telling us to stay where it's safe, even when safe means lonely. Henry looked at Elizabeth's letter. He read one sentence again. Please don't wait another birthday. He smiled sadly. You always knew how to convince me. Slowly, he stood, walked upstairs, and opened the bedroom closet. Inside hung his old navy jacket, the one Elizabeth loved. She always said, wear this when something important is about to happen. Henry gently brushed the dust from its shoulders. then looked at himself. In the mirror, his face had changed. Wrinkles covered his skin. His shoulders bent a little more, but in his eyes, he still saw the father who once carried a little boy on his shoulders. He quietly asked his reflection, "Will he even recognize me?" There was no answer, only silence. Before leaving, Henry walked into the garage. An old blue pickup truck waited patiently. He had bought it when David was 16. Together, they had rebuilt the engine. David's fingerprints had long since disappeared, but Henry could still remember the laughter, the scraped knuckles, the Saturday mornings spent side by side. He gently touched the steering wheel. "It's been a long road for both of us." The engine started on the second try. As Henry pulled away, he glanced one last time at the house. Elizabeth's roses were blooming. The porch swing moved gently in the wind. It almost felt as if she were standing there, smiling. The journey would take nearly 4 hours. The radio stayed off. Instead, Henry drove with only his memories. He remembered teaching David how to ride, his first bicycle, the camping trips, the fishing weekends, the birthday parties, the bedtime stories. Then, his thoughts reached the last conversation, words spoken in anger, neither of them listening, both believing they were right. Henry sighed. "Funny," he whispered. "I can't even remember what we argued about, but I remember losing my son." The highway stretched endlessly ahead. As the afternoon turned into evening, Henry stopped at a small diner. The waitress noticed the birthday card resting on the passenger seat. "Special occasion?" she asked. Henry smiled. "My birthday." She placed a slice of apple pie on the table. "It's on the house," she said. "My father turned 80 last month." Henry thanked her. Before leaving, she quietly added, "Whatever you're driving toward, I hope it turns out the way you're hoping." Henry looked out the window. "So do I." Night began to fall. The headlights illuminated a quiet neighborhood. Henry slowed as he searched for the address. Finally, he saw it. A modest white house, a basketball hoop, a bicycle lying on the lawn, a porch light glowing warmly. Henry turned off the engine. His hands shook so much he couldn't open the car door. At first, he sat quietly, looking at the house. 25 years of silence separated him from the man living inside. Then he remembered Elizabeth's words, "Don't wait another birthday." Henry took a deep breath, stepped out of the truck, walked slowly up the front path. He stood before the door, raised his trembling hand, and knocked from inside. He heard small footsteps running toward him. The doorknob began to turn. The doorknob slowly turned. Henry held his breath. The front door opened just a few inches. A little boy peeked outside, perhaps 10 years old. He wore a blue sweatshirt. His brown hair was slightly messy, as though he had been playing. The boy looked up at Henry. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the child smiled politely. "Can I help you?" Henry tried to answer, but no words came out. His heart was pounding too loudly. Finally, he managed to whisper, "I'm looking for David Collins." The little boy turned his head. "Dad," he called, "someone's here to see you." The word, "Dad," echoed inside Henry's heart. For 25 years, he had wondered what kind of man his son had become. Now, somewhere inside, This house, David, was someone's father. Henry quietly looked around. A baseball glove rested on the front steps. A small bicycle lay on the lawn. Colorful chalk drawings covered the driveway. Life had continued, even while he had been standing still. The little boy looked back at Henry. "My name is Noah." Henry smiled gently. "I'm Henry." Noah tilted his head. "My dad has a grandpa named Henry, but I've never met him." Henry's eyes filled with tears. Neither. Hatte. Footsteps approached from inside the house. Slow, steady. Then, a familiar voice. Older now, deeper. "Noah, who is it?" Henry felt his knees grow weak. The man who stepped into the doorway had gray hair at his temples, fine lines around his eyes. But Henry recognized him immediately. It was David. 25 years had changed his face, but not his eyes. For several long seconds, neither man moved. David stared at the elderly stranger. Then, his eyes dropped to the envelope Henry was holding. He recognized his mother's handwriting. His face slowly changed, almost in a whisper. He said, "Dad?" Henry nodded, unable to speak. Noah looked back and forth between them, confused. "Dad?" he asked softly. "Is this my grandpa?" David closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his cheek. Then, very quietly, he answered, "Yes, I think it is." Noah smiled without hesitation. "Hi, Grandpa. Children have a remarkable way of crossing bridges that adults spend years building." Henry laughed and cried at the same time. He had imagined this meeting thousands of times. He imagined anger, rejection, silence. He never imagined being welcomed by one simple word, "Grandpa." David looked at his father. "I've thought about this day for years." "So have I," Henry replied. David stepped off the porch. For a moment, Henry wasn't sure what would happen. Then, without another word, David wrapped his arms around his father. 25 years of silence, 25 birthdays, 25 Christmases, 25 missed hugs seemed to disappear in a single embrace. Standing on the front porch, Henry quietly whispered, "I'm sorry." David held him a little tighter. "Suani." Sometimes healing doesn't begin with explanations. Sometimes it begins with two words that waited far too long to be spoken. "I'm sorry." For a long moment, neither Henry nor David let go. The years between them seemed to disappear, not because the pain was gone, but because love had finally become stronger than pride. Noah looked up with a puzzled smile. "So," he asked, "can Grandpa come inside?" David laughed softly, a laugh Henry hadn't heard since his son was a teenager. "I think he should." Henry stepped into the house, slowly, almost carefully. It didn't feel like entering a stranger's home. It felt like walking into 25 years he had missed. Family photographs covered the walls. There was David, graduating from college. Another picture. On his wedding day, a photograph, holding baby Noah. For the very first time, Henry stopped. At every frame, each picture was another memory he never had. David noticed his father's eyes. "I wanted to send them," he admitted, "many times." Henry looked up. "So did I. I wrote birthday cards, Christmas cards. I never mailed them." David smiled sadly. "I kept your address. I drove passed the house more than once, but I never found the courage to knock. Henry slowly reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small bundle tied together with a faded blue ribbon. David frowned. "What is that?" Henry handed it to his son. "Open it." David untied the ribbon. Inside were birthday cards, dozens of them, one for every birthday he had missed. The first one read, "Happy 30th birthday, son." Another, "Happy 35th birthday." Another, "Happy 42nd birthday." Each card was signed the same way. "Love, Dad." David couldn't hold back his tears. "You wrote all these?" Henry nodded. "Every year. I just never knew if you wanted to hear from me." David quietly wiped his eyes. "I always wanted to. I was just too stubborn to say it." Noah looked at the stack of birthday cards. He counted. "There are 25. Henry smiled. "I never forgot your dad's birthday. I just forgot how to forgive myself." The room fell silent. Then Noah walked over to a bookshelf. He picked up a photo album. "Grandpa," he said, "would you like to see pictures from all the birthdays you missed?" Henry looked at David. David smiled. "I've been saving them." They sat together on the living room couch. Page after page passed slowly. Noah's first birthday, his first bicycle, his first day of school, family picnics, camping trips, Christmas mornings. Henry smiled at every photograph. Sometimes he laughed. Sometimes he cried. Every picture reminded him of something he had lost, but also of something he had found again. Late that evening, David quietly asked, "Dad, would you stay for dinner?" Henry looked toward the dining room. The table was already set. 4 plates, one waiting for him. He smiled, the same smile Elizabeth had loved for more than 50 years. "I'd like that," he whispered, "more than you could ever know." As they gathered around the table, Henry realized the greatest birthday gift wasn't the card Elizabeth had left behind. It was the family she had quietly helped bring back together. Outside, the evening sky slowly darkened. Inside, for the first time in 25 years, Henry didn't blow out his birthday candle. Alone. Autumn arrived quietly. The trees outside David's house turned shades of gold and crimson. It had been 3 months since Henry walked through his son's front door. Since then, something beautiful had happened. Every Saturday, Noah called, "Grandpa, are we fishing tomorrow? Or can you teach me how to make Grandma Elizabeth's apple pie?" Henry never said no. At 80, he moved a little slower, but somehow his heart felt younger. One chilly afternoon, David called, "Dad, Thanksgiving is next week. We'd love for you to come." Henry smiled. "I wouldn't miss it." Then David added quietly, "There is something I'd like to show you." Thanksgiving morning, Henry arrived early. The smell of roasted turkey filled the house. Pumpkin pie, fresh bread, cranberry sauce, everything reminded him of the Thanksgivings Elizabeth used to prepare. Family photographs decorated the fireplace. Children laughed in the backyard. Neighbors stopped by to say hello. It felt warm, alive. Noah grabbed Henry's hand. "Come on, Grandpa, I have something to show you." He led Henry into the dining room. A long table had been set. Beautiful china, autumn flowers, small candles. Henry counted The chairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then he stopped. One chair remained empty. A white rose rested gently on the plate. Henry looked at David. Who's coming? David smiled softly. No one. Henry looked puzzled. Then why? Set another place? David slowly pulled out the chair. It belongs. To mom. Silence filled the room. David continued. For years, I refused to celebrate Thanksgiving. I blamed you. I blamed myself. But the truth is, I missed her most. He looked at the empty chair. I think she'd want to be here with us. Henry gently touched the white rose. So do I, he whispered. Noah walked over to the chair. Grandpa, can Grandma hear us? Henry smiled. I don't know for certain, but I like to believe. Love always finds a way. Noah carefully placed a handwritten card beside the rose. It read, "We miss you every day." Henry quietly turned away, not because he didn't want to cry, but because sometimes love is too beautiful to look at without tears. Dinner began before anyone touched their food. David stood. I'd like to say something. He looked at his father. For 25 years, I believed I had lost my family. I was wrong. I had only lost my way. Then he raised his glass to mom for never giving up on either of us. Everyone raised their glasses. Henry looked at the empty chair. He could almost see Elizabeth smiling, not because the chair was empty, but because the family around it was whole again. Later that evening, as everyone prepared dessert, Noah quietly walked over to Henry. Grandpa, next year, can you teach me how Grandma made Thanksgiving? Henry smiled. His eyes filled with quiet tears. I'd be honored. At that moment, he realized Elizabeth had left them more than a birthday letter. She had left a path leading home, and every step they took together was another way of saying she would never be forgotten. Vinta returned quietly. The first snow covered the rooftops. The maple trees stood peacefully without their leaves. Life had settled into a gentle rhythm. Every Saturday, Henry and Noah worked together. In the garage, they built birdhouses, fixed old bicycles, and sometimes they did nothing except talk. Those afternoons became Henry's favorite part of the week. One evening, just before Christmas, Noah climbed into Henry's lap. Grandpa, he asked softly, were you really sad when you were alone? Henry smiled. I was, but I didn't know how to tell anyone. Noah thought. For a moment, I think lonely people need hugs more than presents. Henry laughed gently. I think you're wiser than most grown-ups. Christmas came with laughter, warm cookies, old songs, family photographs. For the first time in decades, Henry didn't wake up to an empty house. Instead, he woke to Noah jumping on the bed. Merry Christmas, Grandpa. Henry opened his eyes, smiling. It already is, he whispered. Months passed. Winter slowly turned into spring. One morning, David called. Dad, don't make any plans for your birthday. Henry smiled. I wasn't planning to. David laughed. Good, because we already did. April 17th arrived once again. Exactly 1 year since Elizabeth's letter had changed everything. Henry drove to David's house. As he stepped onto the porch, he noticed something different. There were balloons, blue ribbons, fresh flowers. Noah suddenly opened the front door. "Close your eyes." "Grandpa," Henry chuckled. "I haven't done that in years." He closed them. Noah gently took his hand. "Okay, you can look." Henry slowly opened his eyes. The dining room was filled with people. David, Noah, Rachel, neighbors, old friends, even Walter and Helen had driven to celebrate. In the center of the table was a birthday cake, larger than any cake Henry had seen in years. There was only one candle, just like the one he always lit at home. Beside the cake lay a small envelope. Henry looked at David. "Another letter?" David smiled. "No, this one's from us." Henry carefully opened it. Inside were dozens of birthday cards. Every guest had written a personal message. "Ona be ona." He began reading. "Thank you for teaching us that forgiveness is never too late. Thank you for becoming the grandfather I never knew I needed. Thank you for opening your heart again." Then he found Noah's card. The letters were slightly crooked, written with a child's care. It simply said, "Happy birthday, Grandpa. Thank you for coming to knock on our door." Henry could no longer hold back his tears. He looked around the room. 1 year earlier, he had blown out a single candle. Alone. Today, he was surrounded by people who loved him. He quietly whispered toward the ceiling, "Elizabeth, you were right. It wasn't too late." Everyone gathered around the table. As the birthday song filled the room, Henry closed his eyes. This time, he didn't wish for the past to return. He simply wished for many more birthdays with the family he had found again. When he opened his eyes, Noah smiled and reached for his hand. Henry realized the greatest gift had never been the birthday card. It was the courage to finally open it. Spring returned once more. The roses outside Henry's little house bloomed again, just as they always had. But something was different. The house no longer felt empty. Every weekend, someone visited. Sometimes it was David, sometimes Noah, sometimes neighbors who had become friends. The silence that had once filled every room had been replaced by laughter. One sunny afternoon, Henry sat on the front porch. Noah rested beside him, swinging his legs. "Grandpa," he asked, "what was the best birthday you ever had?" Henry smiled. "I used to think it was the year your grandma made me a chocolate cake from scratch." He laughed softly. "But now I know it was my 80th birthday, the one that gave me my family back." Noah leaned against him. "I'm glad you opened the letter." "So am I," Henry whispered. A few weeks later, Henry made a decision. He walked into the small study where Elizabeth used to write. He sat at her old desk, opened a blank notebook, and began to write, not for himself, for Noah. On the first page, he carefully wrote, "If you are reading this, then someday I am no longer sitting beside you." He smiled, then continued. He filled page after page with memories. How he met Elizabeth, how David used to fall asleep on his shoulder, how pride can quietly steal the people you love most, and how forgiveness can bring them back. At the very end, he wrote, "One final lesson. Never let love wait for tomorrow." Months passed. Summer arrived. Henry's steps became slower. His hands shook a little more. But whenever Noah visited, his smile never changed. One peaceful evening, Henry sat in his favorite chair. Elizabeth's photograph rested beside him. Her birthday letter lay gently on the table. He touched the envelope one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, "for saving us." Outside, the wind moved softly through the roses. Henry closed his eyes. His breathing grew quieter, and with a peaceful smile, he slipped away. He wasn't alone. David held one hand. Noah held the other. A few days later, after the funeral, Noah quietly walked into Henry's study. On the desk, he found the notebook. The first page read exactly as Henry had written it. "If you are reading this, I am still with you. Every time you choose kindness, every time you forgive, every time you love first." Years passed. Noah grew older. He became a husband, a father. Every birthday, he baked the same vanilla cake. Using Elizabeth's recipe, he lit one single candle, then gathered his children around the table before cutting the first slice. He always told the same story about a lonely old man, a birthday card that arrived 25 years late, and a family that almost missed forever the chance to come home. When the story ended, Noah would smile at his children and say, "If someone crosses your mind today, don't wait. Call them, visit them, forgive them, because love should never arrive late." The end. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you love. Sometimes, one phone call, one visit, or one letter can change an entire lifetime. And remember, it's never too late to come home.